the other question I had was a bit surprising. So first, Iran seems to have been caught off guard. How could they be caught this off guard? Is it Trump tricking them by saying, hey, they had the leaks of him telling Israel not to attack, if you remember these leaks, that seemed to be, intended to mislead Iran, allegedly, or either Trump was not informed. So there's like two points to be made there, two perspectives. And then the other one is, I think there was a meeting that was mentioned between Netanyahu and the Trump administration, or some Israeli officials and the Trump administration. Again, these seem to have been intentionally to mislead Iran. So Iran was caught off guard. Would you agree with that? Is that why the attack was so successful? And the second question is like, why initially the Iran, as it was attacked, only had 100 drones that were all intercepted? That was their initial attack. Is that normal for them to be that limited in their initial response?
Well, I believe Iran was totally caught off guard, and I believe that a big part of it played into trusting the United States to be serious about negotiations. What we didn't see behind the scenes were the various proposals that were being exchanged. They were talking about some amazing things about letting U.S. inspectors on the ground in Iran to be part of this, talking about a multinational fuel bank that would absorb excess production capacity. These are unprecedented concessions made by Iran, and Iran, of course, has to consider. So it's a deflection when you say, okay, we're going to consider this, consider that. That means that the Iranian government, preparing for Sunday, is bringing its people in to talk about how do we further this inclusion of American inspectors? How do we talk about this fuel bank? What are the technical aspects involved? That's their priority of thought. And as a result, the military, which was probably on a heightened state of alert, calmed down and said, okay, we'll go back to heightened alert on Sunday. So they went into a pause cycle. And that's when the Israelis struck, when Iran was at its weakest. About the drones, look, Israel, I believe, hit Iran very hard. I think they took out, Iran had a standby retaliation capability of a certain number of their ballistic missiles were deployed in the field. I believe Israel took those all out. Wow. And the only thing left for Iran in terms of an immediate response was to fire off drones. Iran had to do something, had to send a signal that we aren't surrendering. They had to show the people we are responding, because it's psychologically, to receive that kind of Pearl Harbor attack is psychologically devastating. So the regime had to demonstrate we are doing something. They fired 100 drones. They got shot down. Drones are a dime a dozen. It's not the end of the world. But Iran had to, they needed time to recoup, to figure out what assets we have to establish communications with their different missile bases, get an inventory of status, what they're able to do. And then they have to think in terms of a campaign. Okay, how many missiles are we going to launch the first night? How are we going to launch the second night? And so on and so forth. So I think that's why they launched the 100 drones, just as a symbolic act of resistance, until which time they could, reconstitute a strike, a retaliation capability.
So just a correction to be made. The Israeli Defense Ministry did not suffer a direct hit from Iranian missiles. 2 Iranian missiles struck within 150 to 300 meters of the compound. So it seems they have missed the compound. But there is a comment here from the Iranian Foreign Ministry. Quote, "We reject any calls for restraint at this time." And that's from the Iranian Foreign Ministry. Is that expected for them to say that, or does that mean anything to you?
I think right now we're in the standard conflict rhetoric that's coming from both sides. But again, to have the foreign ministry say that's okay, because at some point in time, the foreign ministry could be overridden by higher authorities. The lower down this extreme rhetoric is, the better off you are, because that leaves room for somebody up above to go, all right, we've reconsidered. You get worried when that rhetoric comes from the supreme leader, because there's only one person above the supreme leader, and that's God. And if God is speaking on the side of Iran, we're all in a lot of trouble.
So to let you finish with the comment you were making earlier as we were wrapping, is what do you expect to see over the next 5-10 days? You were answering the question before we got interrupted by breaking news.
I feel that Israel, at this juncture, in doing their calculations, either has withheld an additional Sunday punch to take Iran by surprise, meaning that they're going to come in with some other surprises in terms of capabilities. If they can't do that, then you're looking at escalation in terms of striking Iranian oil infrastructure, et cetera. But if Israel doesn't have any more solutions to this, operational solutions, then the only thing they have to do is bring in the United States. And so they will be seeking to bring in the United States. Iran's job right now is to keep the United States out of this conflict. If Iran right now has demonstrated the upper hand, that they have the ability to strike Israel at will, it's in Iran's best interest simply to repeat this every night. And if Israel is indeed losing aircraft and pilots, that's also unsustainable. And who knows what the future holds? Maybe the Iranians will be able to, snatch up a couple special forces teams on the ground. We'll see. This war isn't over. Both sides now are talking about no red lines going forward. So tomorrow will be a very interesting day.
And it's just crazy the world that we're living in right now. And a few years ago, a war in Ukraine was unthinkable. A war between Israel and Iran was almost unthinkable. And obviously now we're talking about potential conflict between China and the US when it comes to Taiwan.
It's no longer unthinkable.
It's a pretty scary world. Does this war change anything when it comes to Russia, Ukraine, moving attention away? Does that give Russia the ability to continue the war? And does Russia losing a key ally? Obviously Iran is not going to be able to continue sending drones to Russia with the war it's facing. Could that impact Russia's position in the Ukraine war?
Well, Iran's not sending drones to Russia anymore. Iran sent an initial tranche, but Russian defense industry has absorbed these. In fact, the drones that are being launched against Ukraine today, the only thing they have in common with the Shahed 136s that were sent in is their shape. Totally different propulsion, different warheads, different electronic warfare capabilities. Russia has taken those drone designs and made them their own. But that doesn't obviate the fact that Russia owes Iran a huge debt. Iran stepped in at a very critical time when Russia was losing the drone conflict. Russia needed a weapon system to help break Ukraine's air defense systems, and this was the drone. And Iran took a big risk, took great exposure politically and geopolitically to assist Russia. Russia signed a strategic framework agreement with Iran on January 17th of this year. Iran is a BRICS nation. Russia has strategic objectives with Iran, the North-South Economic Corridor seeking to link Russia with Iran through Azerbaijan and others. China just opened up the new Silk Road. These are two nations seeking to position Iran, a BRICS member, to be a critical part of a trans-Eurasian economic union. What does it say if Russia stands by and allows Iran to be picked off by Israel and the United States? This regime change operation fundamentally changes the whole calculation with BRICS and the concept of a multipolar world. So I think we're going to see Russia becoming very heavily engaged diplomatically. I think it's important for Iran to establish its own the ability to stand up on its own 2 feet and punch back, which they did tonight, and maybe they can do that over the next course of next couple of days. But Russia can't afford to allow Israel and the United States to pluck Iran out of the BRICS membership. That would be devastating to BRICS. It would be a huge blow to Russia's credibility and China's credibility. So I think you're going to see.
Could we see any military support of Iran by China or Russia?
I don't believe so.
Again,
China
nothing is unthinkable anymore. I'm asking the questions I would have never asked.
Yeah, no, I mean China doesn't have force projection capacity, but what you would see from China, in my opinion, is a statement being sent to the United States to the effect of karma is a bitch. Excuse my language. What goes around comes around. You pluck off Iran, Taiwan's history, pal. You think you can go around and pluck Iran off? We're telling you right now, Taiwan's history. If you want to save Taiwan, knock this nonsense off. I do think you can see hints of that nature. And for Russia, I think they need to send a signal to the United States too that while Russia is willing to absorb American stupidity in Ukraine because it's simply momentum derived from previous failed mistakes, Russia cannot tolerate America behaving irresponsibly on the Russian periphery, and Iran is a strategic part of Russia's future going forward. I don't see Russian missiles flying, but I do see Russia making it clear to the United States that if you want to have Russian cooperation in other projects, this thing has to come to an end. Israel overstepped its bounds, and frankly, Donald Trump, you overstepped your bounds. Iran could be everybody looking at it saying it's the United States reasserting its role, but I actually see it sort of the high watermark of American hegemony, meaning this is Pickett's charge. That's it. They're not getting any further because China is going to draw a line on Taiwan, and that's the end of Taiwan. And Russia will draw a line saying, not only will we no longer cooperate on Ukraine, but we're not going to cooperate on anything because you are the threat. You are the existential.
Do you think Russia could leverage the Ukraine war and the peace negotiations, and China leverage the tariff negotiations to pressure
China
the
can do
US?
the tariff. Russia can't. Russia has no flexibility on Ukraine. This is an existential struggle for Russia. That's why they've poured all the resources into it. And the Ukraine conflict only ends with the strategic defeat of Ukraine. Russia's not going to give that up for anybody because now we're talking about Mother Russia. But Russia would show flexibility on other issues that it's engaging with the United States, that the United States is deemed to be critical for its national security going forward. But if the United States wants to try and pick Iran off in this way, Russia can't sit back and let it happen. So I do think that there would be consequences for America's actions. And if you get Russia and China stepping in diplomatically to warn America of the dire consequences, and Iran is able to stand up on its own 2 feet and continue to deliver punches to Israel, you could see a negotiated to the settlement that is the detriment of Israel and to the benefit of Iran.